Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Just the tatimma to al-mahmuz, which we just missed it. The first thing is the principle 5 where we learned it is permissible to transfer the haraka of hamza mutaharrika to ma qabl if ma qabl of that hamza mutaharrika is not ya ut tasghir and not waw or ya madda, and also if the ma qabl is not noonul infial, if that hamza mutaharrika happens to be in the bab of infial and happens to be in the ainul kalima, in the place of ainul kalima, in the place of fa'ul kalima, that means it will be mahmuz al fa. Then obviously this rule will not apply because you can't transfer the haraka of that fa'ul kalima, which is hamza, to noon. You can't change the structure of bab. That structure is preserved. So noon of babul infial is the alamat of infial. Okay, so you can't change, you can't play around with that too, because otherwise you will change the alamat.
You can't recognize it.
Yeah, it will be hard to recognize which bab is it from. And second is this yus'ilu is not the siga of majhul that you I think said it is siga of, because siga of majhul must be yus'alu. This is not siga of majhul. Yeah, this is bab if'al. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to third case, third section, 3C, and this time we are learning mu'tal. It's not mu'tal, it's mu'tal. There is a shad and lam. Mu'tal has 5 types, and normally we look into 3 types: Misaal, ajwaf, and naqis. So first of all, we are looking at Misaal. We will deal with lafif ones later on. So Misaal, and then ajwaf, and then naqis. What is Misaal?
Misaal is that kalima which has a harf illat in the fa'ul kalima.
Yeah. Harf illat appearing in the fa'ul kalima will make that kalima Misaal. Okay, principle 1 now. So for Misaal, so that means the fa'ul kalima will be harful illa, either ya or waw.
So if you say mu'tal, when you say mu'tal al-fa, ayn lam,
Mu'tallul fa, yeah. Mu'tallul fa. Okay, not mu'tallul fa. Tallul fa. Sorry, yeah, mudaf ilayh, that's right. So principle 1. It is wajib. It is
must.
Wajib. Necessary. To drop the vowel from a masdar. Drop waw because it is harful illa. To drop the waw from a masdar which is on the scale of fi'lun. Fi'lun. If masdar happens to be on this scale, fi'lun, on the measure of fi'lun, then you drop waw. You drop waw. because vaw will happen to be in fa'ul kalima.
Mm.
Vaw will happen to be in fa'ul kalima. Then you drop that fa'ul kalima. If from the masdar, we're talking about from the masdar. If masdar is on the scale of fi'lun, thereafter, because you dropped fa'ul kalima, which was mutaharrik, so now the second, because on the scale of fi'lun, the second is sakin, which is ainul kalima. Therefore, you need to do something to read the kalima. Therefore, you give the ainul kalima a kasra. Ainul kalima a kasra.
Which you took from the waw?
No, no.
Just a rule.
Just a rule, yeah. You give a sakin kalima because it is a rule, yeah. In the case of sakin, if you need to give a sakin a haraka, then you give it the haraka of kasra. الساكن إذا حرك بالكسر. That's the rule. And then because you dropped something, so you need to compensate that. And then you will place a ta'ul iwaz. Ta'ul iwaz. Ta'ul iwaz means the ta in the compensation, in the iwaz of something, yeah, in place of something, in exchange of something. So that will be brought at the end of the kalima. Let's look at the example to make it more clear. On this masdar, on the scale of fi'lun, for example, wi'dun, for example, wi'dun, on the scale of fi'lun, and you got it's a misal as well because the fa'ul kalima is waw. Misal wawi.
ثلاثي مجرد.
Yeah, ثلاثي مجرد. Wi'dun. Now, Usul says this waw must be dropped, because we are looking into masdar, and masdar is on the scale of fi'lun. Waw dropped, you left with the first one, ain kalma, which is sakin. You can't read the kalma with a sakin to start with.
Blank.
So therefore, you must make a mutaharrik, and to do that, you need to give a kasra. You always give kasra to sakin. If you want to give the sakin a haraka, then that will be kasra. Aidun. Now, because you dropped something in the iwas, in exchange, you will bring a ta at the end. So you will say aidatun, aidatun. That will be your final kalima.
So the ta at the end, it came as iwal.
That's why it is known as ta'ul iwal.
Of the waw.
Yeah.
That we dropped.
Yes.
Okay.
Because then we want to show that there is a fa'ul kalima is dropped, and the first one is not fa'ul kalima. First one is not fa'ul kalima. That's ainul kalima, which is mutaharrik.
So why did we get rid of tanween?
Which tanween?
Idun. On idun. Because you're going to bring it at the end.
Yeah, because now we can't put tanween in the middle and dal. So there is another letter now.
So why fatha? Why no kasra or dhamma on the dal?
Yeah, because fatha is the most easiest haraka to read in this case. That's you can't have two kasras all together. Yeah, on both letters. It will make a skill.
Editun.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. Again, on the scale of fi'lun, wiznun. Wiz.
Nun.
And remember, it's a fa'ul kalma is waw because it's a misal wawi. So the rule says you must drop waw. Must drop waw. It will become the sakin and noon do pesh nun. And you can't read za now. So therefore you must give it a kasra. So it will become zen. It will become zenun.
Zenun.
And then ta'ul iwad should be brought in. And then you say zinatun. Zina
Tun.
ta'ul iwad. Alright? That's the rule. Principle 1. Must. Now the second principle. The second principle. Principle 2. It is wajib to change a waw sakin mudhar. It is again, remember this is again a wajib ruling, necessary to do this. To do what? To change waw sakin. To change waw sakin to ya. To
Yeah.
ya.
What's mudhar? Parent.
Yeah, parent. To ya if the ma qabla of the waw sakin is maqsoor. If the letter before waw sakin is maqsoor, then the letter corresponding to kasra should be ya. Should be ya, not waw.
Miwa'adun.
That's why you change waw sakin to ya, because the letter corresponding to kasra is ya. That will make it more easier to read. And if you have a ya sakin, on the other hand, if you have a ya sakin muzhar, then you must change that to waw. Yeah, opposite to the first one. You must change it to waw, because when the ma qabl is madmum, when the ma qabl is, because again dhamma is in correspondence with waw, not with ya. Okay, so all we're doing here is to make the kalima less thaqil, easier to read, and bringing in the corresponding letters to the harakat. For example, look at when we have a waw sakin and we have a kasra before waw sakin. Miv'adun. Miv'a. On the scale of mif'alun. So waw sakin and the letter before it has got kasra. Therefore, we must change this waw to ya. Must. So we say mi adun. Mi adun. Mi adun. Good. And in the case of ya sakin, for example,
Muisirun.
muy sirun. Muy sirun. Now we have ya sakin, and the letter before it has got dhamma. Therefore, see, it is harder to read now. Muy sirun. It is thaqil. So if we change this to waw, it will become mu sirun. Mu. It is must. It is must. Now it makes it fluent in reading. Okay, that's it. Right. Two principles finished. Let's look at principle number 3 now. Principles of Misaal. Mu'tallul fa. Principle 3. Okay. This principle is permissible. Is permissible. That means it is up to you whether you allow or not. Whether you allow this ruling to happen or not, it is up to you. This time, the ball is in your court. Yeah? So Trump says, I won't be leaving my house even after the term ends, the presidency. He says, I'll stay in the house.
Case to see.
I never heard such a thing from any president. First time I'm hearing this. He says, I'm not going, Mr. Joe. I'll be staying. Kick me out. I'll see how you kick me out. Okay. So, this rule will now behave like Trump. That means it is permissible. If you want to do it, you can do it. Or if you leave it, leave it. Principle 3. It is permissible to change a vowel, madmoom or maqsoor. Wow has got dhamma or kasra. To change that wow, which is madmoom or maqsoor, it is permissible. Which wow? Which occurs in the beginning of a kalima, and a wow madmoom which occurs in the middle of a kalima. If wow happens to be in the beginning of the kalima, whether that wow is madmoom or maqsoor, it is permissible to change that wow to a hamza, to change that wow to a hamza. Remember, if that wow is happening to be in the beginning of the kalima, in beginning, whether wow has got kasra or dhamma, it is permissible to change that wow to hamza. But if wow happens to be in the middle of the kalima, then it is permissible to change wow madmoom only. Wow madmoom to hamza. So when wow happens to be in the middle of the kalima, then wow madmoom, you have the permission to change wow to hamza when wow has got dhamma only. But if wow happens to be in the start of the kalima, in the beginning of the kalima, you have the permission to change the wow to hamza if wow had dhamma or if wow had a kasra, both cases. But if wow happens to be in the middle of the kalima, then you only left with one option. One permission. That means you can only change wow to hamza if you like when wow has got dhamma. Let's look at the examples in this case. For example, the first one, wujuhun. Now you see wow happens to be in the beginning of the kalima. So according to the rule, we can say wujuhun, or we can change this wow to hamza. Because wow is madmoom and happening to be in the beginning. So we can change and we can say, okay, ujuhun. Ujuhun. Both are right. Ujuhun. And when wow happens to be maqsoor, like in the beginning, visha. Again, the example of wow to be in the beginning, but this time maqsoor. This time, the first example was the wow madmoom, and the second wow maqsoor changed to hamza. So we can read it. It is permissible for us to change it to hamza, to change this wow maqsoor to hamza maqsoora. So we can say ishahun. is total fine,
يعني
totally fine.
the harf can be changed, but the harkat will stay.
Yeah, harkat will stay. That's right. Okay. And if waw happens to be in the middle and waw is madmoom, then we can change it to hamza if we like these two cases. For example, advurun,
Adburun.
advurun. See, waw is in the middle now, not in the start this time, and waw is madmoom. Waw is madmoom. So we can still apply the ruling. So we can change this waw to hamza. So we can say this becomes ad urun, ad
Urun.
urun, ad urun.
Is this rule not related to Mithal? It's just general. The third one. Because they've jumped outside the fa kalima.
Yeah, they jumped outside the fa kalima, but the first part was related to misal because that's in the beginning.
Yeah,
That is
the
misal.
first 2 years. But this third rule is not really Mithal, is it?
Yeah, because obviously that has two parts. So whether that wow happens to be in the start or in the beginning, because they said permissible, yeah. Then if wow happens to be in the middle, and they also said wow madmum or maksur. But if wow happens to be in the middle and it's not maksur, then what happens? It's not permissible then. So that's why they touch upon that as well, and they explain. All right.
So it's relevant.
Yeah, it is relevant. That's why they just mentioned here. Okay. Now, what about principle number 4? Principle number 4. That is again wajib, yeah, necessary. Okay. Now this time we are dealing with al-mudari, al-mudari, al-mudari al-ma'ruf, yeah, active mudari, not passive. So what happens? It is wajib to drop the fa'ul kalima, fa'ul kalima in mudari ma'ruf from mithali wawi, from a mithali wawi fail. If a fail that is categorized as misali wawi, yeah, that means there is fa'ul kalima is wow, fa'ul kalima is wow, that will be misali wawi, yeah. If the fa'ul kalima is ya, that will be mithali yai. If a fail which is categorized as mithali wawi, the mudare from that fail, yeah, mudare from that kalima, then you can drop the fa. You can drop the fa'ul kalima. You must, yeah, not can, sorry. You must drop the fa'ul kalima if it is from bab fataha yaftahu. If it is from bab fataha yaftahu. That's the condition.
Only this bab.
Only this bab, yeah. You must drop the fa'ul kalima if that is from bab fataha yaftahu. Yeah. Or its fi'lul mudari is on the scale of yaf'ilu. Yaf'ilu. Fi'l mudari happens to be on the scale of yaf'ilu, then again fa kalma must be dropped. For example, let's look at each example. From the bab fataha yaftahu. Wada'a yawda'u. Bab fataha yaftahu. So because mudari bab fataha yaftahu and it is mithali wawi, wada'a, mithali wawi. So waw must be dropped. So we say, if we drop waw, we say yada'u. It will be wada'a وضع يضع. This will be the final kalima. يضع. It is wajib rule. And in the second case, if mudari happens to be on the scale of yaf'ilu, for example, yaw'idu,
Idu.
yaw'idu, yaw'idu becomes this again vow. Vow is in the fa'ul kalima. It is misali wawi, and mudari is on the scale of yaf'ilu. So vow will be dropped, must be dropped. So it will become ya'idu, ya'idu, ya'i.
ضرب يضرب.
Yeah, this one is from daraba yadribu. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so these are the rulings. Okay, the last principle, principle number 5 of Misaal. Principle number 5 of Misaal this time, which is also wajib. Wajib to apply this ruling. Principle 5. It is must to do this. It is must to change the first vowel to change the first vowel to Hamza. When you have two vowel mutaharrika.
In the beginning of the kalima.
Yeah. Two vowel together and they are both mutaharrikat, both ka harika in the beginning of a kalima. When you have two vowels together in the start of the kalima, then you must change the first vowel to Hamza. First vowel to Hamza. And those vowel will be mutaharrika. Those vowel together will be mutaharrika as well. Let's look at the example. Wa-wa-idu. Wa-wa-idu. Two vowels together, both are mutaharrika, and they are in the beginning of the kalima. Therefore, first one must be changed to Hamza. So you say awaidu. You say awaidu. Must rule. Another example, wawasilu. Wawasilu. Both vowels together, both are mutaharrik. You change the first one, and they are in the beginning. You change the first one to Hamza. So you say awasilu. That's the rule.